You're listening to Two Girls, One Crossword.
Twilight is playing at the local drive-in theater tonight. I know. We're missing it. But I feel like since they have it, they do the same movies over and over again. So I'm hoping that maybe it'll come back again.
Okay, this is great news. I do want our listeners to be aware that we are sacrificing our night tonight to record an episode for you instead of going to see Twilight at the drive-in.
Yeah, so thanks. Actually, it doesn't start till 8:15, so we maybe could make it if we let's speed this up and then we can get there.
Well, that's amazing. Good to know. Summer's here. Summer's queer, and we need something to drive a car that we don't own too.
Zipcar, baby.
I love Zipcar. I got a membership. That's how it works.
This episode brought to you by I wish. I feel like
Seriously.
Zipcar doesn't even advertise anymore. They don't need to.
No, they don't. They're doing well. I assume they're doing well. They're not doing bad, I guess, if they're still in business.
I use their cars. That's for damn sure.
Anyways, is for sure.
If you're joining us, we have no sponsors. We are the Good Evening Girls, and this is Two Girls, One Crossword. I'm Grace Topinka.
And I'm Chelsea Rowan. Your favorite weekly Podword Crosscast is what you're listening to right this minute. Thanks for joining us for another week in paradise.
Almost paradise. All right, should we go right into Polapalooza from last week?
Boop, 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 boop. Polapalooza. Let's do it.
We asked our Twitter followers, which classic soap opera trope are you? Choices were Return from the Dead, Face Transplant, Medical Miracle, or Surprise Family Member.
Ooh, I loved this one, and it was difficult for me to decide which I would possibly choose.
Mm-hmm.
But I think I would pick Back from the Dead, I think the first one.
Mm-hmm. Well, you would be in the majority. That won with 40%, although it was kind of a close race. So Return from the Dead got 40%. Second place with 30%, we have Surprise Family Member. You know, that's like when all of a sudden you're dating someone and then you figure out they're your cousin. Or you like meet some lady, then you figure out she's your mom.
I would hate that. And
then third with 20% was Face Transplant, which is when they just have another actor play the same character, even though he looks really different. And then last place, 10%, Medical Miracle, which there are many in soap operas.
There are. You know, I would pick Medical Miracle second, I think.
I feel like Return from the Dead and Face Transplant kind of fall under Medical Miracle a little bit, but they have other ones too.
Okay.
You know?
Yes. Right. I love Return from the Dead. I love that trope. When you think they're dead and it's like, surprise, I'm here. I love that.
I wonder what the record is for character that's like been killed off the most in a soap opera but never actually dies.
I'm sure that a number exists somewhere online. We should look it up and potentially let our listeners know.
We will look into it further.
Oh, yes.
And if you want to participate in our next poll, please follow us on Twitter at the Good Eve Girls.
Mm-hmm. That's where you can follow. We have some heavy hitting question. Grace really just hits them hard.
One day I'm going to have like a really serious question.
Someone's going to respond, are you all right? No.
That's when you know that something's wrong.
Something is wrong. Something is right. What a beautiful segue into hits and shits. Am I right, ladies?
Look at the way you did that. You must really want to get to Twilight.
We got to get to Twilight, so I'm going to speed this up. I'm actually just going to completely cut out my entire topic. So, yeah, I guess I will start.
Start us.
I'm going to start with the Friday, May 7th New Yorker by Patrick Berry. I liked Six Across. Appreciative gesture involving bringing one's fingers to one's lips. And the answer was Chef's Kiss.
I love that.
Which reminds me of the new emoji they have, the Italian hand. I was so happy when they added the Italian hand emoji.
I don't use that. I'm stuck in my ways.
I love it. I love it. Especially when I go like Long Island, you know, or South Jersey, like South Philly, and you gotta get the hands going.
Mm-hmm.
It's the whole thing.
You do.
You do indeed. Also in that puzzle, shout out to episode 88, 28 Across, part of YMCA, and the answer was men's. Young Men's Christian Association, and don't you forget it. Okay,
like
you learn all sorts of things on this podcast. You'd be able to answer crossword clues. Like, oh my God, can you believe? And And then I like learning fun facts through crosswords, as you probably all know. But 32 Down, first brand to use the phrase, "but wait, there's more," in its infomercial. And the answer was Jinsu, which was a knife brand. I don't remember these infomercials. I don't know when they were happening, if they were on when I was a child or not. But I was reading a little bit about this knife brand on Wikipedia. And apparently, they're just some knife brand made in Ohio. And their name used to be something extremely bland and American. And they decided to, orientalize or exoticize their brand and named it Jinsu to kind of provoke the idea of a samurai sword. Which,
oh my gosh.
And apparently Jinsu, the brand, is the brand that formalized infomercial techniques. So, okay.
They paved the way for sure. Because I feel like in ShamWow, I guess they say that in a lot of infomercials.
Right,
I'm thinking of the ShamWow one.
Do they say, but wait, there's more in ShamWow too?
I think they do. And also the Slap Chop.
Oh, yes.
That guy is...
Sticky Buddies.
Yeah, he is like... on one.
I love the Slap Chop guy, okay? Somebody sent me a video of the Slap Chop guy and said, this reminds me of you and our mutual friend when we first started working together. She was saying Mike. It reminds her of me and Mike. And I was like, you know what? If someone told me that my brand of humor reminded them of an infomercial, I feel like that would be the ultimate win.
You guys do like to advertise fake products that you've made up.
That's actually the most fun I've ever had in my life, is inventing fake products with this mutual friend of ours and then try to get people at our job to want to invest in the fake product. We've actually come up with some pretty good ones. If you're ever interested, just shoot me a line and I will.
What was one? Wasn't there an umbrella one?
Umbrella Box. I stand by Umbrella Box. It's like Uber for umbrellas, but it's different, okay? I can't do the whole pitch now.
Yeah, I get it. It's like divvy bikes for umbrellas, but I feel like umbrellas are too easy to steal. But I see what you mean, though.
Your credit card's on file. We just charge you.
Do it at all the L stations. Watch, this is going to be a thing. Well, we said it here first, ladies and gentlemen.
I've been saying Umbrella Box for years, okay? Anyway, also from that puzzle, and this kind of showed up in a different puzzle as well, sort of, 53 across, place to eat on the go, ? The answer was dining car. And then in the Sunday, May 9th, Waypo by Evan Burnholz, there was 9 down, liquor serving space on a train, and the answer was bar car. And it just made me want to go on a long distance train ride and solve some sort of murder mystery while on the train.
I took an overnight train to Memphis from Chicago, and I was thinking it'd be a perfect place to solve the mystery.
I would love that so much. And so if anybody wants to buy me a cross-country train ticket, just shoot me a DM and we'll work something out. Okay? Okay. That's what I got.
Speaking of Evan's Sunday Washington Post, I liked 22 across, whoa blank, ! Singer Furtado's debut album. It's Nelly. I didn't know that was Nelly Furtado. Whoa, Nelly. But I love it. And then I thought you would like this. 124, chaotic blank, certain moral alignment in D&D, and it's chaotic evil. I didn't realize that came from D&D.
Yes, it does. I find if I had to put myself on that, scale, I'd be more of chaotic neutral because I love chaos for literally no personal gain other than humor.
Yeah. I feel like I'd be chaotic good.
Grace is definitely more on the chaotic good. I feel like there are times when I could even lean chaotic evil just for shits and giggles.
I'm like chaotic good, chaotic neutral. I do like to make up lies that are completely harmless. Just to see what I can get away with.
Literally lie about anything just to see what people will believe. That's like the most fun you can have. Just say something ridiculous, like I have a 6th toe. It doesn't hurt anybody.
Lying's the most fun you can have without taking your clothes off. Isn't that
without taking your teeth out? Yeah.
Isn't that a Panic at the Disco song?
I think it is, yeah. I also liked from that puzzle 109 down, giving people a B when you should be giving them an A, say. And the answer was off key. Very nice.
That was nice. Well, I also really liked the Thursday New York Times by Andy Kravis, Natan Last, and the JASA crossword class, which we've liked theirs before. So JASA, JASA, stands for Jewish Association Serving the Aging. And we looked into this before when we first saw it like a couple of years ago. But it's basically a crossword class where the class works on constructing a crossword together, and then it gets put in the New York Times. And I always feel like they're really good, probably because it has multiple people using their brain power. But some clues I liked were 64 across, what was cool for a long time, Ice Age. 65 across, supermodel Holiday, Tess Holiday. I liked seeing her in there.
I don't know who Tess Holiday is.
I think you would know her if you saw a picture of her.
Okay, I believe
she's like the plus size model with a lot of tattoos.
Okay, I'm buying into that. I need to see a picture.
Okay, 26 down, musical featuring the Jellicle Ball.
Cats, of course.
And then the theme was all movies that were a question, like movie titles were a question, and then the answer was another movie title. So, for example, Dude, Where's My Car was Salem's Lot.
Nice.
What's Eating Gilbert Grape? Parasite. Who Framed Roger Rabbit? The Usual Suspects. How the West Was Won. True Grit.
Amazing.
And Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? Home Alone.
Amazing. Also, I watched Dude, Where's My Car so many times as like an under 10-year-old, not realizing at all what the movie was about. At all. And like as an adult, I reflected on that and I was like, oh, I probably shouldn't have watched that as like a 7-year-old, but I watched it all the time. I thought it was so funny. I didn't know what I was laughing at.
In middle school, but I just remember the where they wake up or they get the tattoos on each other's backs and they can't see their own tattoo. Hilarious. Truly peak comedy.
Peak.
Some other good ones from that one were 33 down, More Than a Couple was threesome.
Yes.
Cool 90s style, 54 down, was Fat, P-H-A-T.
Oh, yes.
And then 29 down, Get a Load of This, Laundry.
Nice. That's some good cluing in that puzzle. Yes. Very nice. Speaking of Natan Last, I loved his Monday, May 10th New Yorker puzzle for a couple reasons. 21 across, 1 past 12, question mark. And the answer was teen. Because, you know, if you're 1 year over 12, you're a teenager.
I follow, yes.
Thank you for your support. I also liked 27 across, Lady Macbeth for 1. And the answer was Sleepwalker, because she is. But also, it's just an interesting clue for the answer, Sleepwalker. So very nice. 30 across, Cheeky Bottoms, question mark.
Thong.
Booty Shorts.
Ooh, nice.
Nice. And then I learned a couple things. I'm going to start with one that I thought was interesting. 30 down. Sacks, also known as blanket sticks. So you know those, you know, like people that have like a stick over their shoulder and at the end of it they have like a little sack tied?
Oh, yeah.
That's called a bindle.
Oh.
So the answer was bindles. And apparently that's like its official name. So that was an interesting fact that I learned. But this was the most interesting fact that I learned this week, aside from the topic I'm about to do. 48 across, sports term thought to derive from a phrase cried by French acrobats before leaping.
What?
Alley-oop.
Oh.
Derives from French, the French phrase allez-oop. A-L-L-E-Z-H-O-P. But the H in French is not pronounced. So aller is a conjugation of the French verb aller, with an ER at the end, meaning to go, and oop, H-O-P, is a French onomatopoeia simulating the sound of a little leap. So, allez oop is a way to say, let us jump on our feet and go. Which I thought was really interesting.
I didn't know that either.
That's Love it.
Where it comes from. Well, speaking of learning new things, in the USA Today May 13th puzzle, Dancing Partners by Claire Rimkus, 57 down, bone that can be true or false. Your rib.
You can have a false rib?
Yeah, so your true ribs are like the ribs on the top. They're connected to your sternum, but then on the bottom of your rib cage, you have ribs. They're like floating ribs. They're only connected by cartilage, and those are called false ribs. So don't believe them. And those are the ones that I think some people, I don't know if it's actually true, but people get them removed for various purposes.
Right. Okay, that's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
You have anything else?
No.
Okay, I'm going to end then on the Tuesday, May 11th New York Times by Kevin Peterson. One that I love to see, 18 Across, 2012 Grammy winner for Channel Orange. The answer was Frank Ocean. So nice to see Frank Ocean show up in a puzzle. Mm-hmm. And that album is like life-changing for many reasons. Also great to see, this was part of the theme, which I'm not going to get into, but 21 Down, The Pill, for example. And the answer was birth control, which is a really nice long answer in the middle of the puzzle. Just like to see birth control in the middle of a New York Times puzzle. Shake things up a little bit. And then, did you know, this is something I know, and I feel like a lot of people know, but Matt did not know. 14 Across, candy sold in pairs. And the answer was Twix. Mm-hmm. Did you know that buying a right Twix or a left Twix, you're buying a different type of candy? Like, no. One has more of the cookie and one has more of the caramel. I believe that's the differentiation.
No, like the ones that are sold in the package together, one has more caramel.
So you know the packets say right or left, right? Correct.
No.
Oh, well, they do.
Bought Twix in years.
Yes. Well, next time you go to your local convenience store, you'll see that Twix packaging will say either right or left. And make sure you Google before you buy them because one is different than the other. So, yeah.
I'll have to check that out next time I go. I do have to buy toilet paper, so maybe sooner rather than later.
Ooh, nice. And then, this is a little shit. This is tiny, tiny shit. A little teensy tiny one. 11 Across. One might say recalculating after a wrong turn. And the answer is GPS, which is not wrong. If you're using a TomTom from the early 2000s, for whatever reason, and you go out into bumfuck wherever, your GPS may say recalculating to you. However, I would argue that when people use GPS as a phrase nowadays, they mean like Google Maps or Waze, right? So it's just like nobody actually says recalculating anymore. It's like I said, it's not actually a shit. It's just more of like, was that the right clue for this answer?
What does Google Maps say? I don't know if they say anything. They just might reroute you and be like, good luck out there.
They do. They just reroute.
Who knew? So. I'm surprised because Google Maps takes every opportunity it can to talk over my podcast and music.
We found a faster route. We'll save you 1 minute and 27 seconds. Would you like to go? No. Just keep on keeping on. That's just what I have to say. Down. Speaking of GPS and Waze and Google Maps, I saw TikTok. I don't know if this is true, but if somebody out there uses Waze, let me know if this is real. But apparently, I think you can have somebody record each of the directional phrases for you, and then Waze will then use that person's voice to have, say the directional phrases. So if like you have a partner that has a very distinctive way of talking and you're driving, you can have your partner speak to you as Waze. Mm-hmm. And you can have them say funny things for, like, instead of turn right, you'd be like, do a quick banger to the right here, there, or something crazy. And like, that's what will play over Waze to you. And that would be fun to do.
It would be fun for like 5 minutes, I think.
It's true. Any more fun than that, it'd be over for us all. That's all I got.
I didn't know that. I felt like I knew that you could get celebrity voices. I don't know if you have to pay extra for that.
Oh, interesting.
But okay, do your own. Why not? Have fun with it.
Do you. Speaking of doing you, shall we flip the coin?
Flip it.
All right. I'm flipping the coin now.
I feel like we've been on a tailspin lately.
Ooh. Well, buckle up, folks, because the tailspin is over.
I knew it.
We are headed straight down the highway now. I got my Google Maps up, and I'm ready to go.
Ooh, nice segue.
Let's hop right into it. My topic comes from the Wednesday, May 12th New Yorker by Wina Liu. 25 down. Attraction invented by 16th century watchmakers to showcase their miniature wares. And the answer is Flea Circus.
Oh.
Okay. So
Watchmakers.
I initially thought that this was just another name or like some sort of precursor to flea markets. Okay.
No, is it like an ant farm type thing, but with fleas?
Sort of, Grace. Sort of. It is, well, it is very much not a flea market. Okay, so I went into this topic thinking it was going to lead me to flea markets. It did not lead me to flea markets at all. So I was going to ask you if you'd heard this phrase before, flea circus. I had never in my life heard this before. That's why I was just like, oh, flea market.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's just get into it, okay? So hold on to your hats if you've never heard of a flea circus before, because it's going to get real. A flea circus is a circus sideshow attraction in which fleas are attached or appear to be attached to miniature items like carts, for example. And then these fleas then, quote unquote, perform circus acts within a miniature set.
Are these fleas dead?
No. Hold on to your hats, like I said. So
Okay.
I was like, I read that. I was like, what the hell are these people even talking about? And then I go back to the clue and I'm like, 16th century watchmakers were off their rockers. That's all I got to say. All right. We'll start with the history because that's where it all begins.
Mm-hmm.
Like the clue suggests, flea circuses were invented as a way to tout craftsmanship in the 16th century. And of course, if you're looking to tout your own craftsmanship, get a bag of fleas. That's the first thing that comes to my mind, of course. Anyway,
Makes
so
sense.
in 1570, there was a London blacksmith by the name of Mark Scalliot, and he crafted a tiny gold chain that he then affixed to a flea as a sort of world's smallest pet collar. Yeah. For lack of a better word, of a way to describe this, this was a publicity stunt or a public relations stunt to show off Scalliot's work and artistry and his ability to craft beautiful miniature wares.
Mm-hmm.
It just feels so freaking random to me.
Also, I feel like there would maybe be easier small animals than, I guess. I don't know. Something like an earthworm or something,
Right. Like what? I'm going to talk about why fleas specifically later. But even then, I still ask, why fleas specifically? Anyway. So yeah. Scalliot's little publicity stunt was relatively successful because other artisans and watchmakers began utilizing fleas to showcase their own skill in miniatures. So he kicked off this whole trend.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the 1800s, there was a shift in terms of how fleas were being utilized to showcase artistry. A man by the name of Louis Bertolotto, who was an Italian impresario living in London, decided to use fleas in a more structured manner. So in case you don't know, an impresario at the time was essentially some sort of entertainer or producer, and they would produce content like operas or circus sideshows, things like that. So that was his job. Sir Bertolotto designed a new act that was, quote, an extraordinary exhibition of industrious fleas, end quote, where the bugs were the stars of the show as opposed to the products. So it was shifting the focus away from the wares, which had been the purpose initially, onto the physical feats that the fleas could do.
Okay.
Okay. Because everybody was dying to see minute insects perform crazy feats, clearly.
Mm-hmm.
So Bertolotto's show was part action, humor, and social commentary. His fleas would pull tiny carriages, dance to music with tiny instruments, and Bertolotto even recreated the Battle of Waterloo by having fleas ride on golden saddles and wield swords against one another.
I need to see this in video. Does that exist? No.
Yes.
A video exists of it?
Yes. Well, not of this show specifically, because this was in the 1800s.
Yeah.
There are more modern / contemporary flea circuses. And yes, you can YouTube it. And I did. And it's just, I don't like bugs, at all.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so I don't necessarily like to see bugs moving and grooving in tiny humanoid sets doing
I just wonder how you get
things.
them to hold swords and go towards each other.
We'll talk about that. Yeah. Yes, it's just I've done the research. I know that what I'm about to tell you, and I'm still confused. Okay, so we're moving on. So, Bertolotto's shows were so successful that he was able to travel all over the world, even to North America, where the flea circus phenomenon also caught on. And it was thanks to his inventiveness that flea circuses became hugely popular between the 1830s through the 1960s in places like England, Germany, and North America. This is wild to me. In the United States, there was an American man named William Heckler, and he was one of the first successful American flea circus ringmasters. Heckler referred to his flea performers as, quote, skilled professionals, and the fleas performed feats such as juggling, racing, and boxing. Heckler even claimed that his fleas could listen and respond to voice commands.
Okay.
Like a dog or something. So honestly, as I'm teaching this to you, it feels like an April Fool's joke, and I promise you it is not an April Fool's joke. Like, this actually would be an incredible April Fool's joke. Like, I feel like I could make this lie up, but
yeah,
this is real, okay? This is as real as it gets. So over time, flea circuses became linked to carnival sideshows and country fairs, and you'd see flea circuses in action next to bearded ladies, fire eaters, contortionists, and strongmen. As popularity rose, ringmasters needed to invent more tricks for their fleas to perform. High diving, reading books, magic shows, to name a few. Sadly, interest in flea circuses waned with time, as all things do.
Can't be forever.
By the 50s, there were concerns about animal cruelty, so less people were interested in watching apparently enslaved fleas performing circus tricks.
In the 50s, I feel like we were not even thinking about animal cruelty then. We were sending straight up like monkeys to space.
Yeah, okay. And so that brings me to a side note that I have. In the 1920s, in the House of Commons in, the UK, flea circuses were mentioned in relation to various animal protection reforms happening in the House of Commons at the time. Though at the time, the general feeling towards performing animals was that it was ridiculous to need to protect them. So nothing happened. So that sounds about right for the time. Back to the 50s. It wasn't just concern about animal cruelty, however, that kind of went with the decline of flea circuses. But it happens that hygiene was the main reason for the decline of flea circuses, and maybe not in the way that you're thinking. It wasn't because flea circuses were dirty that they started declining in popularity. It was because things started getting cleaner. So like vacuum cleaners and warmer, drier homes actually wiped out the performers. Fleas were becoming scarce, which meant that there were less bugs to catch and subsequently torture into performing. Okay?
Smaller talent pool.
Smaller talent pool. Okay? We were cleaner as humans, so there was less fleas. So ringmasters turned to mechanical flea circuses instead, which used illusions like secret levers to make it appear that real fleas were performing. A lot of times, these mechanical circuses also had loose fleas within the exhibit to help maintain the illusion.
It was a lie.
It's all a lie. These circuses became known as humbug flea circuses because they were a humbug. They weren't real. And then from the 1960 to 1964, there was a British comedian named Michael Bentine, and he had a TV series called It's a Square World, in which a prominent feature was a mechanical circus. Like, that was a big feature on that show. That came up in every single thing that I researched, so I just wanted to mention that. I don't know who this comedian is, but I feel like it's worth mentioning.
If you didn't, someone would come for you.
They would, because I'm sure that there's a very loyal flea circus community out there. Anyway, so how the hell was all of this possible? Like, how did they get the fleas to do what they were doing? It's a doozy. First, we have to talk about fleas. Why were they using fleas? We have to remember that when all of this started, it was the 16th century. That's the 1500s, okay? To put it simply, fleas were everywhere. Literally. We were overrun with fleas. Up until about the 1940s in England, most people shared their houses and beds with a species of flea called human fleas, also known as house fleas. So, like, you could just find these, you could lift up your pillow and you had your next performing troupe. So fleas like dirty, damp environments, which are best for raising their young. After fleas gorge themselves on vital fluid, like blood, you are left with a raised red bite mark That's often itchy and may last for several weeks. Fleas jump from host to host, and they can transmit plague, typhus, tapeworms, and many more diseases. To rid yourself of fleas, you'll probably use a variety of medicated shampoos to kill them and wash them away. But if you really, really want to evict fleas, you're probably going to have to shave your hair. Most fleas don't live past 3 months, but some fleas, under the right circumstances, can live for more than a year. So great. Thank you for the lesson on fleas. They're everywhere. They suck blood. They suck in general. If that's the case, why use them in a circus? Right? Like, why? Here's a quote from How Stuff Works. Quote, "Fleas are a curse on warm-blooded creatures. The parasitic life-suckers feast upon the veins of all things furry and feathered. With their piercing mouths and ravenous appetites, fleas hop around, latching onto mammals of all kinds and spreading misery in their wake. But fleas have at least one redeeming quality. They also make extraordinary circus performers." End quote.
Well,
One, go ahead.
that's not enough of an explanation.
No, but here it is. The main key factor lending to their strength as performers is that they are wingless. They cannot up and fly away whenever they want. Okay? But the most important... Okay, so there's the wingless, right? More about the fleas that are used in the circus. Fleas used in the flea circuses have flat bodies that are about 2.5 millimeters long and have elongated back legs that are incredible for jumping. Their vertical leap can reach 7 inches, and their long jump can reach 12 or more inches. The jumping feat is due to the elastic cuticles made of resilin in their legs. They are able to charge up energy and release it at a split second. So, they're really strong in the legs, and they can jump, and they don't have wings. So, earthworms can't jump, Grace, but
That's
fleas
true.
can jump.
But how do you train them to jump when you want them to?
Funny you should ask, because this next section I'm going to be talking about, how do you train a flea? Ringmasters of flea circuses throughout time have told stories that wild fleas could be in fact tamed, okay? One ringmaster said that you could tame fleas by keeping them in a shallow glass with a lid. After a few days of bumping their heads, the fleas were supposedly docile enough to be attached to circus props. But here's the truth. Fleas have no capacity for learning or being trained, but fleas do have unique strengths. For instance, one flea might be great at jumping, another flea might be great at pulling, or even another could be a good kicker, right? Mm-hmm. So after a batch of fleas are caught, they are observed by the ringmaster to see what they might have a predisposition for, like jumping, walking, kicking, pulling, etc. Once sorted, they are carefully harnessed by attaching a thin gold wire around their neck. Once in the harness, they are there until they die.
I just can't... I don't know. Maybe I'm imagining the size of these fleas incorrectly.
They're tiny.
Yeah. How do you even know where their neck is?
Yes. So it takes us back to the clue, right? Like the reason people were using fleas is because they wanted to showcase how amazing they were at creating miniature wares, watchmakers in particular. Imagine how intricate watches used to be, or even watches now. Like you have to have like these jewelers magnifying glasses on, and you're moving the tiniest and tiniest of pieces. And in order to show and prove that you're so good at this, you get a flea and you find its neck and you put a collar on it, apparently. You know, you walk into your local jeweler and you're like, show me your fleas or I'm not buying a single watch.
That's good advice for people who are into fine jewelry.
Yes, so you heard it here first. Okay, so like I said, the fleas are sorted. And then they're affixed in their little death collars, okay? Mm-hmm. And then these harnesses are then attached to various props and set pieces. Because fleas have such long legs, they can move objects significantly larger than themselves. Jumping fleas are used for kicking small, lightweight balls. These are just examples. This is not every single thing. This is how you might get a flea to do a certain thing. So to get them to kick a lightweight ball, they are carefully given a ball. When they try to jump away, which is not possible because of the harness, they shoot the ball instead, therefore kicking the ball. So they could play soccer that way, for instance.
Okay.
Running fleas can pull small carts and vehicles or rotate a Ferris wheel.
Oh my gosh, these poor fleas. I mean, whatever. There's way worse. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about the fleas and their consciousness.
Right. So then there's juggling. I didn't like this one. So you would position a yoked flea on its back, settle a smidgen of lint on its legs, and it will flip it around and around and around. Then you would suspend a piece of string between two little poles, and the harnessed flea will do a bit of a tightrope walk. So
okay,
that's some things you can do. And then this is the saddest one. There are some reports of fleas being glued to the base of a flea circus enclosure. Miniature musical instruments were then glued to the flea performers, and then the enclosure was heated, and the fleas fought to escape, giving the impression of them playing their instruments.
Oh gosh. Yeah.
So is this animal/insect cruelty? According to the SPCI, the Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Insects, yes, this is insect cruelty.
Yes.
They claim that flea circuses force insects to display repetitive, abnormal behavior associated with stress and the absence of suitable physical and social environment necessary to the welfare of the insect. Cool. But just to mention that the SPCI website has not been updated since 2006, so I could not find more information on their proposed insect welfare bill. But if anybody in the UK has any information on this insect welfare bill, because the SPCI is based in the UK, please forward it my way. So yeah, are there still flea circuses around today? The short answer is yes. You can probably find a couple flea circuses still in operation today, though the number is dwindled significantly. I found a list of operating circuses online, but their websites are all from the early 90s and honestly look like I'm going to get a virus from being on them. So, but there is, in fact, a Chicago-based Acme miniature flea circus led by ringmaster Adam Gertzikov. Okay. And Gertzikov started his flea circus in the early 90s. Here's a quote from Gertzikov. Quote, "I want to evoke the idea of the old Victorian-style flea circus. I don't want the show to be about stupid pet tricks. Of course the show is about the fleas, but on some level it's about the experience of the show and going back in time to see an old-fashioned showman doing an old-fashioned show. And as of 2017, Gertzikov has been hosting the flea circus at Garfield Park Conservatory in Chicago." Well, that was the last time he definitely was hosting it at the Garfield Park, was in 2017. I don't know if in the year of our Lord 2021 he is still doing it. His website is crazy, so
I would go to that. But if it's only a flea circus, like give me a whole, sideshow.
Yeah. And then I'll end by saying that there is one really famous flea circus. It's the most famous flea circus still in existence to this day. It was started in 1948, and it is the annual circus at Oktoberfest in Munich, Germany. So you can see a flea circus live there. Apparently, I read blogs of people who went, and they were like, it was the trippiest thing I've ever seen.
I believe that.
I feel like this whole topic was really trippy.
Yes, I certainly learned something new.
You certainly did.
It did pique my curiosity a bit, even though I do feel bad for the fleas.
I feel bad too. I obviously don't know anything about flea anatomy. I don't know about their brains, whether or not it matters that they're being glued to a heated surface and forced to pretend to play an instrument. But it just makes me feel weird to hear. Like, I don't like the idea of like an animal being chained to or an insect being chained to something and like forced to do these things that's outside of their nature. It made me feel weird reading about it. I don't know anything about this stuff though, so
that being said, I also vacuum up spiders, so
right, me too. And I just mutilated a silverfish the other day, but that's because I was afraid.
That's fair.
So, I mean, come for me. I don't know. It felt weird reading about them being glued and heated. Strange.
That seems like cruel and unusual. Maybe
right.
That's why. It's like
a
step beyond unnecessary.
Right,
and just
exactly.
for your entertainment.
Right. Anyway, there's not many left in existence today, so that's that.
That's that on that. My topic comes from the Wednesday New York Times crossword by Tracy Gray, and it is 15 down. Arcade money. Tokens is the answer.
Tokens. Is this was the New York Times?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know if I did the Wednesday. Okay. So what are you talking about? Arcades?
I'm talking about arcades.
Nice.
Our arcades. Your arcades, my arcades.
Lots of
Everyone's
here.
arcades. And I got almost all of my information from one extremely long article on TheVerge.com called For Amusement Only, The Life and Death of the American Arcade by Laura June. It went very in-depth, so
nice.
if you're interested in learning more, you can
Don't you love when you find like an article and it's someone
has everything.
It has everything and it's like so informative. This Flea Circus one I just did, I felt like I was on every article known to man. Just trying to piece together all the information. Anyway.
Well, I was reading other articles and then I was like, I feel like they're just pulling straight from this other article that I read. So
Right.
Yeah. All right. So have you ever been to a real arcade?
Yes.
Well, I'm going to tell you the hallmarks of a real arcade according to this article.
Okay.
First of all, obviously, lots and lots of video games. Also, some pinball machines. They are dark, which make it easier to see the screens, and they don't sell food or alcohol.
Okay. I definitely have been to a real arcade when I was a kid. As an adult, I've been to fake arcades then because they sell beer arcades. Yeah.
So supposed real arcades, they are not 21 and over like the ones that we probably go to now. In fact, most older adults wouldn't want to hang out there. This is a quote from the article. Quote, "This is a place for kids to be with other kids, teens to be with other teens, and early stage adults to serve as the ambassador badasses in residence for the younger generation."
Oh, yes. Like you see in like TV shows or something, they were like, who was such and such who had a perfect score? I have to beat them. They're like that legend.
Yes. So to get to the history of the arcade, we have to talk about the history of the coin-operated amusement industry. So this coin-op industry developed jukeboxes, pinball machines, slots, gumball machines, and later video game cabinets. That's what you call like the arcade video game station console thing. It's called a cabinet.
Okay.
But coin-op has its roots in gambling. But since gambling was so heavily regulated, slot companies started like using their, technology or manufacturing to make other things. So gumball machines were first created by slot machine companies.
Wow, gotta love it.
As a way to make money without being gambling. But this tie to gambling would follow coin-op machines for a while, especially pinball machines. This was like a major issue back in the day. Some people argued that pinball machines were a game of luck, therefore they were just another form of gambling. However, the makers insisted that pinball was a game of skill and you can win. So both sides were kind of right back in the day because some early pinball machines, they did have cash payouts and they were basically designed to be won through luck alone. They didn't have all the, fancy gadgets and gizmos now. Okay. But cash payouts were eventually abandoned because the gambling accusations just became too annoying. They were like, okay, we're not going to make it like this. Right. They invented some new things to add to it that, helped people win by skill. But in the early 40s, there was a lot of anti-pinball sentiment. Seth Porges, a writer and expert in the history of pinball, says that while people associated pinball with gambling, there was a more sinister belief that pinball was a tool from the devil and that it was corrupting youths.
Of course.
Parents argued that pinballs were a gateway to gambling.
Ooh, gateway drugs. Love it.
Exactly. And in 1942, New York City Mayor Fiorello LaGuardia banned pinball in the city. Yes.
Y'all, all these people are so vanilla.
Well, LaGuardia hated corruption. During his time as mayor, he shut down brothels, rounded up slot machines, arrested gangsters on any charge he could find, and he banned pinball. He said pinball machine pushers were, quote, slimy crews of tin horns, well-dressed and living in luxury on penny thievery.
Oh my God.
He really had it out for the pinballs.
Sure.
But he actually ordered police officers to go and do like a prohibition-style pinball raids, and they ended up seizing like thousands of pinball machines around New York.
I wonder where they are now.
Well, they destroyed them. So there's a famous picture of LaGuardia taking a sledgehammer to a pinball machine with a giant smile on his face. We will post it on our Instagram.
Oh, yes. I love this.
This man hated pinballs, okay? But the pinball ban swept major cities in the US like LA and Chicago. And fun fact, there's only one major city who never had a pinball ban. Can you guess what it was?
One major city. Tell me.
One of the only major cities left. San Francisco.
Oh, okay. I was like,
So
Dallas.
shout out to them. But pretty soon you could only find pinball machines in seedy locations like porn shops and dive bars. And in the 1950s, the pinball machine was associated with rebellion. So an example of this would be the Fonz in Happy Days was like a pinball wizard.
Yes, pinball wizard. Gotcha.
Exactly.
Sorry, that's a song from, what is that, The Who? I don't know.
But yeah, that's why like pinball is associated with being a badass, leather jackets, that whole thing.
Ooh, I love it.
But in order to prove that these machines weren't gambling, a lot of them had signs that read, quote, "for amusement only," which you see still in arcades today. It's the title of this article. That just further proves that you don't win any money by playing this game. It's purely for amusement.
Mm-hmm.
And this is also when amusement parks started using tokens as to not be confused with actual money.
Interesting. Okay.
Mm-hmm. So there's a fear from parents that pinball machines would, quote, zombify their children, which you hear today with, everything can zombify kids.
Mm-hmm.
In a 1957 issue of Better Homes and Gardens, said parents should, quote, act now to keep your child from being victimized. I'm starting to think that there's always something that scares, like, the next generation. I wonder what ours is going to be.
Right. I couldn't TikTok. I couldn't imagine what else it could be.
Okay, so it wasn't until 1974 that the pinball ban was overturned in California, and in 1976 it was overturned in New York. So the ban lasted for like 30 years.
That's wild. Because I feel like, like my dad grew up at arcades and doing things like that. Like, but he would have been, a teenager in the 70s. So it's just interesting to think. I don't know.
Yeah, well, it's not pinball? In every. This was by city, so that was like in New York.
But still.
But so I thought this was kind of cute. Roger Sharp was known as like the pinball master at the time, and he had to do a demonstration in front of the legal counsel to prove that pinball was a game of skill. So he basically had to show off that he had skills and he could like win the game, and that helped get it approved.
Oh, good for
overturned.
Him.
But unfortunately, even though we were happy for the pinball machine to be back in good graces, it was too little too late because something even bigger was looming on the horizon.
Okay.
The video game.
Ooh, we're here. We've made it.
So an important player in video games is Nolan Bushnell. He will come up a lot. But in the article, they described him as a lapsed Mormon from Utah. I don't know, ex-Mormon. I don't know if he went back. But anyways, he graduated from the University of Utah in 1968 with a degree in electrical engineering. However, in the summers, he worked at an amusement park, which had pinball, ball throwing games, etc., like the old school games. But pretty soon, his school computer engineering world would combine with the amusement park world. So at school, he was playing computer games on like the big computers they had at school, one of which being Space War, ! Which was developed in 1962 at MIT. And Bushnell met up with another engineer named Ted Dabney, and they created Computer Space, which was, based off of Space War. And that was the first commercial video arcade game. And it was released in 1971.
Wow.
So this is kind of good for, if you're doing a trivia game, but a lot of people think that Pong was the first video arcade game to come out, but it's not true. Computer Space was the official first one. But it's largely forgotten because it was a huge failure. Like, people didn't like it. But that did not stop this group. They partnered up with a design engineer named Al Alcorn in 1972. They incorporated under name Atari.
Okay.
Yes, Atari was formed.
Interesting.
And I didn't know this, but Atari is a move in the Chinese game Go, which has been around for like thousands of years.
Yeah, okay.
That's a favorite game of Bushnell's, so that's where the name Atari comes from. But they continued this trend of reimagining computer games into arcade games. So they had been playing the home console game Ping Pong, which was a remake of one of the first computer games ever called Tennis for Two. And they used this to create Pong in 1972. And Pong was a huge success. It made $40 a day, which is a big deal. Like, the Pong machines made $40 a day. And they sold 4,000 units by the end of 1974.
Damn.
In 1975, Sears released a special edition home version of Pong, and it sold 150,000 units.
Wow.
So basically, Pong's success made video arcades like a viable business. A lot of people wanted in. And video our video games had a advantage over the pinball machines because they were much easier to repair and upkeep. They didn't have as many like moving parts. You know, pinball machines are all types of complicated. Over in Japan, Tomohiro Nishikado released Western Gun in 1975. And then he licensed it out for the American version called Gunfight. And Gunfight was important because it was the first to use a microprocessor. And so Nishikado used the money he got and the microprocessor to make the next big hit, Space Invaders, in 1978.
Ooh, I like this.
Yes, and this game was so popular everywhere, especially in Japan. There were arcades that were dedicated solely to Space Invaders. So they didn't have any other machines, God. No other games. It was just Space Invaders.
Amazing.
The next years until 1982 saw crazy growth in the video game industry. A January 1982 cover story in Time magazine noted that the most popular machines were pulling in $400 a week in quarters, and the number of arcades in the U.S. reached its peak around 13,000.
Wow.
Video arcade games started popping up at grocery stores, doctor's office, even at like school rec rooms. The arcade chain Tilt started opening up in malls across America. And then in 1980, the most famous arcade game of all was released. Do you know what it is?
Pac-Man.
Yes. So Pac-Man appealed to a lot of people. You know, they say some of the other games are more marketed toward men, but everyone could play Pac-Man. And Pac-Man branded a lot of products. So there was, you know, lunchboxes, clothing. There was a cartoon show. This article said it basically rivaled Hello Kitty in the amount of like merchandising that it had.
Amazing.
The song Pac-Man Fever was a 1982 Billboard hit, selling more than 1 million copies.
Wow.
A quote from the article, quote, "Arcades in the late 1970s and early 1980s held a particular place in the American way of life. Like shopping malls and roller skating rinks, they were safe, isolated areas where kids and teenagers could hang out and, with a reasonable amount of money, spend hours without their parents." So,
amazing.
Business was booming. It was $1 million industry, but soon it was going to pop. The problem was too many people were trying to get in. Small towns had like multiple arcades. Players would get bored of games. In 1981, they stopped producing Space Invaders because nobody wanted it anymore. So game manufacturers tried making their games harder, but then that drove away casual players. But then if the games were too easy, hardcore gamers would move on from them too quickly and not spend a lot of money. So there's kind of like this catch-22. And there were so many games created after Pac-Man. Like once people saw how successful that could be, so many people tried to create new cool games like that. But a lot of them were failures. One of which was Atari's game, E.T., which was created in 1982 after the movie. So this game was such a failure that people like returned it. And this was kind of like an urban legend, but it's actually true, that they sent like all the Atari games into a landfill in New Mexico and poured concrete over it.
Wow. You mean the Atari ET game specifically?
Yes. Sorry, ET games. And in 2014, they did an excavation of the so-called Atari video game burial. You can, if you want to look that up. But they were able to recover 1,300 cartridges. So yes, the burial site does exist. And ET is considered one of the worst video games ever created.
I love that.
But it wasn't just this. It was also the return of the fear that arcades were poisoning the youth and providing gateways into other bad behavior. In 1982, the U.S. Surgeon General, C. Everett Koop, said that while there wasn't yet scientific evidence of any harm, children were becoming addicted to video games, body and soul.
Why? I feel like this is always a conversation of like, how can we police what young people do to find enjoyment in their life? And I mean, of course there's the question of screen time and like regulating how much time you are in front of a screen and whatever, but like, I mean, is it really so bad to like want to play video games, like and engage in, because video games are puzzles essentially, if you get right down to it.
Well, I think that obviously anything could become harmful if you do it too much, but something else I read said that kids who play video games tend to have higher IQs as well. I don't know if that's like causation or just coincidence. Right. But I'm just imagining what would General C. Everett Koop think if he saw Grand Theft Auto or something? Like talk about corruption.
Right. Or like all of like the war video games. Like the biggest game right now is like PUBG. People are just playing PUBG constantly. And it's just a game where you shoot people. You try and stay alive the longest. But I feel like playing video games, I'm not sure. Obviously, I'm not a scientist and I haven't read any freaking research on this, but like you said, like they tend to have like potentially higher, people who play video games potentially have higher IQs, but they have a skill set that is really unique and marketable to various things. Like, you know, different militaries are trying to recruit young people who are really good at video games to have them control drones, for instance, like is one.
Which is horrible.
Which is horrible, of course. But like that's one thing that like it's like a skill that you learn.
Yeah. Well, it kind of makes me laugh because back in the day, you'd be like, well, you can't just play video games. Like, you know, you have to go to school and get a job. And now it's like, if you're really good at video games, you can make a lot of money off of it being a competitive.
Exactly.
Gamer. Well, by 1983, video arcades were dying. Also, home gaming was becoming a lot more prevalent. People had home consoles at that point. So there was a little bit of a renaissance in 1991 with the release of Street Fighter II, which later inspired Mortal Kombat. And yes, you could play these games at home, but to get the full effect, you needed the technology of a video game cabinet at an arcade. But these days, arcade places that have arcade games make their money from something else. So you think like Dave & Buster's sells food and alcohol. Beercades sell like, you know, IPAs and other hipster stuff.
And the games are free.
Yes, exactly. At some places, not that one bar in Chicago. You do have to buy tokens.
Oh, yeah, I don't like that. Yeah, that one is like, okay, I'll just stay in my local neighborhood and go to the one that has free games. And
yeah, agreed. But basically, suffice to say, the arcade of the past is dead. Will it ever come back? I don't know. This is a quote from the article. Quote, "It's shocking, of course, to realize that the golden age of video game arcades lasted just a few short years. But if we tie it unto the turbulent history of pinball, we're looking at a much longer institutional part of our culture, which, in the 1980s, began to pass away. Like roller skating rinks and other public spaces for young people only, our culture seems to have decided that kids are better off when they're not alone with other kids, and worried parents have been victorious in their mission to rid us of these troublesome spaces."
Intriguing.
Yeah, which, I mean, I feel like it's, you know, it's not black and white. I'm sure shit went down at arcades.
Of course. Just like they
without
do.
Proper supervision.
Yeah, exactly. But at the same time, it is, you know, I think important to like loosen the reins and like let your kids make some mistakes if they're going to make a mistake. And if they're going to do it at an arcade, I mean, obviously, who knows? Crazy things can happen anywhere, right? But
yeah.
I also don't have kids, so.
Yeah, serial killers loved that time in history.
They did.
Kids were just out, you know, doing whatever.
Doing whatever they wanted. Speaking of resurgence, there was a mini, I think, arcade resurgence during our youth when DDR came out. Remember when DDR came out?
Yes.
It changed. Everyone wanted to play DDR.
Yeah, we had it at our movie theater. A lot of people played there.
You could play DDR at the skating rink or like the bowling alley, that kind of thing.
But all those places still have arcade games, but that's not their main source of income. It's the difference.
Right.
I wanted to end with 3 little extra fun facts I came across while doing my research. One, Nolan Bushnell, the founder of Atari, he also founded Chuck E. Cheese.
Charles Entertainment Cheese.
Yes.
I hate it.
Pac-Man's iconic shape was inspired by pizza, although I may have mentioned that.
I don't think you did. That's amazing.
And then Bowser, the main antagonist in Mario, was originally envisioned to be an ox. And this makes sense because that's probably why he has horns and a defined snout, even though he is a turtle. So
I never thought about that, but I love it.
It had never crossed my mind before. I was like, oh, you're right. He does have horns and he's a turtle. I just thought maybe he was, an intense turtle. But
yeah,
that's all I got for you.
I love it. I really want to go to an arcade now. The last time we went to an arcade was when we went to that beercade for the SpongeBob pop-up bar.
That was a long time ago.
That was a long time ago.
Well, Cheesy's now has an arcade bar.
Really?
They added it on. They've had it for a while, actually.
Okay, I did not know that. The only one that I'm aware of is the one that's sort of close to you where we went to the SpongeBob pop-up bar.
Yeah. There's another one, too, in Boys Town. Anyways, I don't want to... I'm giving away where I live. Anyways, please don't stalk me.
Yeah, that'd be great.
But you can contact me on Twitter. So our Twitter is @TheGoodEveGirls.
Or Instagram @TheGoodEveningGirls is where we post our fun photos. If you're interested in seeing photos of the Flea circus or like the fun photos Grace wants to show of LaGuardia beating the crap out of a arcade or pinball
machine. Come check us out on Instagram.
Yeah.
And then you can follow us on TikTok at The Good Eve Girls. We haven't posted anything in a while, but, you know.
We have fun there. Yeah. We'll take another follower, whatever you guys want to do. I think that's it. And I think that's all. We've had a grand old time with entertainment topics this week. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening. Oh, and thanks for 30,000 listens. We officially hit that this week.
Wow. Thank you, guys. This is weird, but in a good way. A good weird. A crazy weird.
Yes. We love to hear from you, and we're very thankful that you listen to us.
Yes, we are. We appreciate you to the moon and back. If I could, I'd buy you a ticket to your nearest flea circus.
XOXO. A hug and a kiss from both of us.
The good evening, girls.
Bye.
Bye.